Thank you, everyone, for joining me on my Finding Our Father podcast. Today, I'm blessed to have as my special guest Catholic author David L. Gray. Thank you. Thank you, David, for
Yeah,
joining me.
welcome in, Joseph. I'm happy to be here, man.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Um, I've been reading your writings, and I'm really thankful that I found your website and I found your YouTube channel. Um, like I've told everybody, I focus on this series of podcasts on the issue of fatherhood, fatherlessness, and how those issues contribute to a lot of social ills that we're experiencing
Yeah.
right now. And you've been, for a Catholic layman, you've been really open and honest about your conversion story.
Yeah.
So thank you. And I wanted to go right to that. And I will, on the bottom of the page, I'll post a link to your website. And then what I do in the video description, I'll post a link to these articles that David has written in the video description. And where could I ask you first, where were you born and where were you raised?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Northeast Ohio, a little town called Warren, Ohio. Warren, Ohio. If you ever heard of well, it's about an hour south of Cleveland, but it's more so around the Akron and Youngstown area.
And then when were you born, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh wow, we're getting personal here, Joseph.
Well, you can ask a guy. I would never ask a lady.
Right. No, I was born in 1972.
Oh, so we're about the same. We're about
Yeah,
the same
yeah,
generation X.
yeah. I'm just a
Generation.
couple years behind you.
It
Yeah.
was born 69.
Okay.
So
Okay.
so I'm older. Um, this one article. This is what you wrote about. I'm just going to get right into your story. Um, what's interesting too is people that I've interviewed and people like you who are authors and podcasters and Catholic laymen. What I've often found most interesting, I mean, besides what you've written and what you've done in your podcast, is your
Mm,
own story, and it's
mm,
been like that over and over again.
yeah.
You wrote this about your father. You wrote, he said, "My one regret is that I never got to raise a child from the beginning to the end. Even though Dad had 7 kids, his 2 marriages and 2 relationships that produced us always ended before any of us reached puberty. I spent my whole life trying not to be my dad in this regard, that ended up being very similar to him." So I mean, you had a complicated childhood, I should say. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
Yeah, this is really interesting. Usually when people have me on their shows, I'm talking about Freemasonry or I'm talking about
oh.
liturgy, but so this is different. I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to do here, but yeah, I was my father, a little bit older than my mother. He went away to the military, and at some point in time, he comes back and meets my mom. My mom is still in high school at the time, so he's a little bit older,
Oh,
and so mom gets pregnant. They never marry, and so the story I heard later on in life was that, my father, my biological father, he didn't want me. He didn't want me. He wanted my mom. Abortion wasn't legal back then, but he wanted her to get rid of it. And he also, he beat her um, when he found out she's pregnant. And so, um, but later on, I think he always had a relationship with me. I always remember him when I was younger, and there's pictures that prove it. I'm always over at his house, and my memories can go back as far as about 5 years old. I always remember him being, in my life,
okay.
and we got closer. We got a lot closer when I got, the older I got, and I started getting into girls. I started getting into cars. We got a lot closer, and um, I always wanted to ask him about that, though. About he didn't want me or something like that. But I never, I was on a precipice of asking him one time when he was taking me to college. Shortly before he's taking me to college, he's dropping me off back at home, and I wanted to ask him, but it never came out. Something else came out like, "Hey, Dad, should I go to the military or should I go to college?" I became like a real coward. I can't even ask him like this most important question before he passed away. But yeah, before he passed away, um, that was an interesting moment. I was, I traveled up to his house, and he had retired. He was an auto worker. He had worked a lot of years. He was always this disciplined guy,
Wow.
very disciplined, very tight with his money, and but very responsible. He owned his house. He had a lot of cars, motorcycles. So but after he retired from, I think, Packard, they made cars in Warren, Ohio, after car parts. And after he retired from there, he became Rick James. Rick James. Started partying all the time, drugs, women. He just became a whole different person after he retired, and
Wow.
all those drugs took a toll on him very fast because he just went in full throttle. I think we had the same personality in that way. That same with me. I'm either all in or I'm all out, right? And so I've had to learn how to moderate myself to not go crazy about everything. But he has that same personality. So when it came to the drugs, he just went all the way in, and it took him and destroyed his body. So, and this is when I'm in his kitchen. I travel up to see him. He's not doing well, and he and I was recently divorced at that time too. My wife had divorced me, and so we're talking about getting married. Shit. I don't know if I'm gonna get married. Back then, I was discerning the priesthood. Really don't know what I'm gonna do. I maybe want to be a priest.
You
You
were
know,
you were discerning the priesthood?
yeah, I was. Yeah, this is
Wow. Okay.
yeah. Because I was a convert. I converted in
Right.
2006. My
Right.
wife divorced me in 2010.
Right. I'm gonna.
So
Yeah, I'll get to that. Yeah.
right. So a lot of guys are like, what do I do? I think we all have responsibility to discern the priesthood. So
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah.
And so and I said, what about you, Dad? Do you think you're gonna get married again? Do you think you want to have kids again? And that's when he told me that his one regret was that he never had opportunity to raise any of us from beginning to the end. And it was amazing that I think he's like 20 years older than me, and I was 38 at that time. So he had to be. I mean, he's 22 years older than me because he died when he was 60. So,
Well, he died
um,
very young. Wow.
yeah. So yeah, it was amazing to me at 60 years old that he would still do it again. So yeah.
So you had a sort of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you had a sort of reconciliation with your dad at that moment. No?
I would say it was good hearing that from my dad.
Yeah.
That because I remember when I was a kid, all my brothers, I always call myself an anomaly, right? Because my mom, she went on to get married, and she has 4 kids with my stepfather Roy, and all of them have his last name Joseph, right? McCullough. And then my dad, he had a couple wives and some women, kids by other women, and all of them have his last name, right?
Right.
Scott. But I'm David Gray. I have my mother's maiden name, and so I
You
always
wrote
felt.
about that here too. I wanted to get to that here.
Yeah, so I always felt like the odd person out. And so I asked him, I remember asking him at one point in time when I was still in high school, I said, "Hey Dad, because my other siblings who were from his previous marriages were living with him at that time. And I was like, "Hey Dad, how come I never live with you?"
Right.
And he was like, "Well, you never asked." And so and that always kind of bugged me, right? And so when we come back until they're in his kitchen when he's 60, near death, and he's telling me, my one regret was I never had that opportunity to raise any of you guys from beginning to the end. That meant something to me.
I
It did.
bet. I
Yeah.
think a lot of us who had, you know, a lot of us who had troubled relationships with our fathers wish, my dad's passed on, wish that we could have had some kind of conversation like that with our fathers. I never really did. I think a lot remained unspoken between us. I think we had an understanding, but that popped out to me when I read it. And then you talk about your stepfather, and you wrote this. You're a beautiful writer too. I had a stepfather as a kid, and I think Roy Sr. did the best he was capable of, and I'm deeply grateful that my mom gave me that. But it cost me deeply as well. Once she and Roy started having their own kids, my 4 brothers, I began to realize that I was different and that I was all alone, Sure, Roy came to most of my baseball and football games, but he was my brother's coach. My brothers had his last name. One of them has his first name, but I had my mother's maiden name. I'm sure Roy loved me, but it looked different from how he loved my brothers. I was deeply affected psychologically by feeling that I was invisible.
Mm,
Wow.
yeah. Yeah, that was I don't know why it was, but I always felt alone. I don't know why, you know. I remember just always feeling alone as a kid, right? Um,
I read that back to you, and I wanted people to hear it, and I want people to read it because yeah, I experienced that as well, and a lot of men, especially men who later got into homosexuality. I mean,
yeah,
it's different circumstances, different families, different family
right,
dynamics,
right.
but there's that feeling of not belonging, of being alone, of so just something being wrong.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I remember I told my mother that one time too. I was I remember I was in a bathtub and I just started crying out of nowhere, just bawling out. And my mother comes into the bathroom and she asked me, you know, what's wrong with you? And you know, I tell her I feel alone. And my mother is a wonderful woman, bless her soul. But she's not that deep. She's pretty shallow in a funny sort of way. So and she and my mother says, why do you feel alone? You're not ugly.
Oh, God
I
bless
mean,
her.
yeah, that's how deep she could go. That's how that's what she was thinking. And that was really the first time my mother lied to me, Joseph, because I was a very ugly kid. I mean, I was very ugly. Even family members would tell me I'm ugly.
Really? Oh,
Yeah, yeah. I was,
okay.
yeah, I maybe the ugly
Well,
duckling.
you grew out of that then.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Yeah, maybe I was an ugly duckling. I don't know. But yeah, and so yeah, that's like one of the earliest memories I have of just having that consciousness of just feeling like completely alone.
Well, you said it here. It's a psychological wound, and people can't see that. I mean, even people that love you a lot of times can't
Mm.
see it because it's inside. It's inside.
Yeah, that feeling of
So,
invisible. Yeah, yeah,
yep, yep. Then you wrote this. As this I found very interesting because I'm assuming this you're growing up in the 1970s,
hmm
and now I hear this story a lot, especially from young men, where half of families nowadays are divorced, half
yeah,
so kids are usually living full time with mom and then part time with dad, and then dad a lot, and mothers do this too, and dad a lot of times then starts another family and
yeah,
has kids with the other wife. This is interesting what you wrote here. It's pretty prophetic. As for my biological father, he would pick me up every other weekend, but it was just a different version of being all alone at his house. All of my siblings who lived with him had his last name. One of them had his first name. Sure, it was always fun times at dad's house, but I was just passing through. I was there on Friday and gone by Saturday and invisible for the next 2 weeks. Just heartbreaking. I think a lot of children experience. I mean, I hear it. Experience that
yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was I don't know. I don't. You know, it's hard. You know, I could back then when I wrote that, I was able to put that into like in the words. But when you're a kid, you don't know really how you
Oh no,
feel.
no.
You know, you feel kind of off,
Yep.
right? But you're not able to articulate it. You don't even know what's wrong. And I remember when my mother got married. I was the only kid for a while. Even as far as my mother is my mother's kid, and on my maternal side of the family, I was the only boy for like 8 years, right? Until my mother started having kids with Roy, and all of a sudden, I'm not the center of attention anymore in my mom's house, and that was a struggle as well. And I ended up flunking, and that was a year. That was that same year. I'm talking about, man. Coming to this consciousness of feeling alone, and I ended up flunking fourth grade. Not because I wasn't smart or anything. I think they had these all psychological tests, these IQ tests. I was fine intellectually, but something was just off with me in school because something's off with me at home.
Yep.
In the
It's
most the
strange.
work.
I remember seeing. Sorry, I remember seeing that because I flunked a grade too.
Oh, really?
Yes, I did.
Wow. You think it was the same thing?
I, I just there was something going on with me that just manifested
Yeah.
at school.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was raised in a different family than yours with different circumstances.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was something psychologically going on with me.
Yeah. Because you're a very intelligent guy. Obviously, it wasn't. It wasn't an issue of probably intelligence back then. It was just that sometimes that, as a school teacher, when I was a school teacher, I was always conscious of my students not performing to a level that I knew they were able to. And
Right.
so I was always conscious, maybe there's something going on at home, you know?
Sure. Well, I also, I went to Catholic schools and I don't know if I think grammar schools, and public schools are the same way. I had all female teachers. I
Mm.
think if I would have had a male teacher, I think at that
Hmm.
point, I think it would have helped. I did
That's
it.
interesting.
I did in middle school,
Yeah.
because I was an odd kid. I just, didn't get along with other boys and
Yeah.
was feeling like you talked about, feeling lonely and alone a lot, and just
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was strange.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
Can I? This is it. This is at the end of this article, and this really got to me. Probably more than anything that I've read so far. You wrote that yearning I had to belong to someone, to have one of my father's last names, was nothing less than my innate desire to belong to God. My heart was just trying to find its home in the apparently closer relationship that my fathers had with my brothers. I saw a taste of what the divine looks like. And because of that, I felt the pain of not yet having it. I felt all alone, and I cried out for it without knowing for that. I cried. Wow. This, this is jam packed because I think what you're talking about here is the root of a lot of societal problems. I think there's a young man that are yearning for I think it starts with a faulty relationship with their father, whether it's abusive or not. And then but it's also connected with their longing for, like you talked about, with longing for God and the divine. And when if one doesn't happen, the other doesn't happen, and you have people that are really lost and I think are angry. So
Hmm. Yeah. 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 That's yes, man. I don't think even no, obviously it's again one of those things back then you just don't obviously know what you're searching for, what you're longing for. Um, but I think you're absolutely right. That a lot of that probably is obviously the root of a lot of societal ills of people just searching for the right thing, sometimes the wrong thing in all the wrong places, right?
and you were looking even in your own family and observing. I mean, because you had a unique kind of perspective where I a lot of times was looking at my friends or my peers at school,
Okay.
observing their relationships with their
Okay.
dads. I mean, you were
Yeah.
looking in your own family with your stepbrothers and saying, well, that's something that is missing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's easy to notice too, like you read earlier, when my mom and my stepfather start having kids, I just because up until then, I thought I was completely Roy's. I thought I was like his blood. I was like, oh, this is what I have here is awesome. He's at my games. He's teaching me baseball. I thought that was I thought that was normal. And it's a little bit different what I had when I went to see my father Oscar on weekends. He was great too, and I had obviously two good dads, but yeah, when my brothers started coming along, how Roy treated them was just okay. Well, maybe that's it, you know, and that's right there. I think that really affected me more than anything else in my life because I never wanted both my relationship, both my fathers affected me more than anything in my life. First with Oscar, my father, is that the first promise I've ever made to myself was that I do not want to be a father like him. I never want my kids outside the house. I want to see my kids in the morning and when they wake up. I want to see them their whole life. And so the first promise I ever made to myself is like, and it was a silly promise I made to myself. I said, the first woman I get pregnant, I'm going to marry. All right, because I wasn't catechized or anything. I didn't know the proper order of things. I knew it was supposed to be. I didn't know it was supposed to be the opposite, right? Of getting married first. But that was the first promise I ever made to myself. The first woman I get pregnant, I'm going to marry, and I did that. All right, so that affected me. I never wanted to be some sort of weekend dad.
Yeah.
But then with Oscar, with my stepfather Roy, that came into play after I did get divorced, and here I am, just like Oscar. I'm like this. I'm worse than a weekend dad sometimes because I'm living very far away from my daughters at that point, so I'm worse than that. So that's upsetting. But then with Oscar, but my stepfather Roy, that comes into play because now I'm saying, oh, okay, if I do get with a woman, I do not want to be a stepfather. I do not
Mm.
want to be with a woman who has a kid already,
Yeah.
because I don't want that child to feel like I felt different,
Mm.
like I felt with when Roy and my mom started having kids. I don't want to.
Mm.
I never want to put that emotional baggage on a kid. So, but there I was getting married to Felicia, who already had a kid. So,
It's crucial that, because a lot of men won't do this, it's crucial that you admit that your relationship with your father and your stepfather were really integral and instrumental in your life. I mean, my dad was not abusive to me. He never hit me, but our relationship was just strained. I think we were very, very different people. We didn't click. And although I kind of disregarded my relationship with my dad, later, it took a lot of time to figure out that it was important. I think the to a young boy, I think the most important relationship in his life is going to be with his dad when he's young. I think it
were,
sets
you,
up so
were,
much
you,
later.
were you the only boy?
No, no, I have a brother,
Was he older or younger?
older.
He was older. How was their relationship?
Probably the same.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. My dad, things are complicated. And when you're a kid, your father is not like a human being. He's just like this, he's almost like God. He's just like this person in your life.
He's
And
other. Yeah, he's
yeah,
other.
he's other. I mean, a mother is a little, or I don't know, maybe it's different in different families. But a
Yeah.
mother is, more tender, more compassionate. She's more there. And
Mm-hmm.
dad is kind of the arbiter of, punishment, and and
Yeah.
that was my dad. And
Mm-hmm.
later learning about my dad's own childhood, like shock, my dad actually had a childhood, and he was a boy and he had a father. Wow. So learning that it was he had a very quite difficult childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And when I learned about that, it made sense that he had difficult relating to his son,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I read one time, and I think it's true for some people. I don't know if it's true for you, but they say at some point in time, a boy on his journey to manhood, he'll develop a very tenuous relationship with his father, and it's because that there comes a point in time where his father can't teach him anything. He starts to disregard what his father says. And so that boy then has to go out and find another man to mentor him and teach him what he's going to not accept from his father. And I think that's true. Kids I mentored, I think that was a relationship I had with them, because a lot of them had a dad, but they're at that point in their life where, like, they need to hear from another man the truth, and that will have impact. But I think with me, I never had to have that. I never got a chance to have the opportunity. Um,
But you were involved in sports, David.
I
So
was.
did you have good coaches that were good
That's what I was
mentors?
thinking. That's what I was just thinking about. As I was listening to you.
Because when I read your story, I was like, well, I always look at, I haven't. everything in my perspective is kind of LGBT. I kind of look and I go, well, his story is very similar to a lot of men who later became gay.
Oh,
But I saw that and I thought, well, he was involved in sports. So he probably had a good coach. He had a lot of camaraderie with other people, with
yeah.
other boys on the team. So that makes a difference a
I would
lot
say
of
so.
times.
You're saying like gay guys, they don't guys are attracted to get a point where they're attracted to men and attracted to the same sex. They go through. You saying they're not really into sports or
Well, that's a stereotype. But I mean,
okay,
typically you'll find that's why I could relate to your story on a certain level. I
yeah,
mean, you'll find a young man who feels alone, alienated, whatever. There's some kind of strained relationship with their dad. There's just it's not doesn't necessarily is abusive, but it's not working.
hmm,
And then a lot of times a young man like that will become more friendships with girls, have a more intense relationship with his mother, and all these other dynamics will hit. There's a sensitivity, and
okay.
it's a different
Yeah.
personality.
You know what? I think I did have. So I didn't have any really coach that were strong mentors or teachers who were like strong mentors. I never had that. But thinking now, that's a good, that caused me to think. Remember something? I think what I did have, Joseph, I had a lot of good male friends
Mm,
who had good fathers, or what appeared to me good relationships with their fathers. Some really close friends, and so I think in them, I was able to see, okay, that's how that works. Okay, I can, okay, I see, and I seen more of what I was missing, with my friends who had, fathers in the house. So maybe it was that.
yeah. Now you've been open and honest about your conversion story, so I
Hmm.
wanted to I wanted to move on to that. Do you think, because you had some difficulties later in life, do you think any of that had to do with your childhood or difficulties you had with your father or your stepfather? Have you thought about that?
What aspect?
Well, the way I've thought about it is that a lot of men who grow up in, let's say, a dysfunctional situation or
Hmm.
something in the family, it'll exhibit itself later in life, whether it's a turn
Okay.
towards homosexuality, pornography, alcoholism, gambling. I mean, you got involved with some criminal activity that you talk
Yeah.
about. I mean, sometimes I think it just manifests later on in
Hmm.
different ways in different people.
Yeah. Are you a psychologist?
No, I had 20 years of therapy. 20, I know, because people write, because I write stuff like this and people will go, yeah, are you like you should have been a psychiatrist.
Right. Right.
So, well, I self-analyze myself a lot. And
Okay.
when I read, because I'm reading your life story essentially, I
Yeah.
start analyzing you, and I want to know about your childhood. I want to know about
Yeah.
different things. I go, well, why did he do this and why did he do that?
Yeah.
Because I'm very interested in people and how they think and why they do things.
Yeah. I
So
was
when
never.
when I was reading your story, that's what I was thinking about. I go, well,
I've always failed to make the connection between my childhood and what me ended up embezzling money from my company. Well, not my company, the company I work for. I mean, I can really only point to a couple things. People are inclined to different things. We're all inclined to some sort of um, disorder or behavior that we shouldn't be doing as children of God. For as long as I remember, I've always been inclined to taking things that wasn't mine.
hmm,
When I was 5 years old, I came out of the store with a I had to be around five. I came out of the store with this remember those little plastic boats you could put in the tub with you?
oh yeah,
Yeah, I just walked out of the store with it and I got back to the car and I was like, "Hey mom, look what I got." And my grandmother was there and she's like, "Gwen, take that back into the store." What didn't happen at that moment was any accountability from anyone. I did not get in trouble. No one spanked me. No one did anything. And that was really the pattern my whole life. As a kid, I used to do some bad things,
Wow.
um, juvenile activity, breaking things and beating people up, stealing money from my grandma's purse. You
Who
you
is
name
the
it. I was just
who
I was
is
just bad.
yeah, who is the disciplinarian in your family? Was it your
I was
stepdad or
when my mom was married, it was Roy, right? It was
okay.
my stepfather, but that he was abusive to her.
Oh
He would,
dear.
and so she eventually left him.
Okay.
Um, but then after that, it's back to and I went to live with my grandmother for a while, and like I
I mean,
said,
yeah. I
I
mean,
never
since
really.
you, okay, sorry. I mean, since you were feeling invisible, do you think that was a way to make yourself known? Like, here, I'm doing these bad things. See me, you know?
Yeah, maybe,
Do you think
maybe.
that? Yeah.
I felt there was, I would say it was me wanting to prove what I can get away with.
Hmm.
But maybe the next step was, well, why did you want to feel like you could get away with stuff? Well, maybe it was because I wanted some sort of attention,
Hmm.
and but it was a pattern of behavior that kept escalating. That stuff just gets worse. If no one checks you, no one makes you accountable for your actions, it just gets worse. And so I'm in my 20s. It's cheating on my wife. You know, paying for abortions.
Oh man.
It's stealing money. I mean, stealing money it was not even top five worst things I've ever done in my life. But it was just another. It was just, and so finally, I'm in the courtroom, and and thank God the people who I stole the money from wanted to lock them up and throw away the key because the prosecutors just want to give me 6 months because the money was paid back, most of it. So give them 6 months, slap them on the wrist. But the people I stole the money from wanted, it was political at that time, just lock them, throw away. If they had given me 6 months, I'd probably be the same person I was, right? But
Wow.
when that judge said 9 years,
Oh,
that fixed me.
yeah, I bet. I bet. You wrote this. I wish I could say that I went to prison and found Christ, but that would not be the truth. It was Jesus who found me in very bad condition and gave me a new opportunity at life. That is the exact same thing that happened to me. It's just I didn't find God. God found me. That's
Mm,
profound because I was going about my life. I got into a lot of different problems, prostitution, pornography, and all this
yeah.
stuff. But it was that way for me too. It's just God took pity on me,
And
and
you
it
were
was
broken, right? You reached a
I
point where you just broken.
yep, yep,
Yeah. Yeah.
yep. I mean, everybody gets there in a different way.
Yeah. Hopefully. All right.
Yeah, but I mean, anyway. And then you wrote this. Oh, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. On August 8th, 2006, I was confirmed and received into the Catholic Church, taking Saint Joseph as my confirmation name. It was funny. Saint Joseph was there as a kid, as I used to ride my bike past St. Joseph Hospital in Warren, Ohio. And there he was again at my hour of conversion in St. Joseph Parish. I suppose he has always been there watching me move along. I see St. Joseph as a very important place in my life. It's so bizarre because I mean, here we are, two different people, different parts of the country, getting into different problems and
Yeah.
whatever. And St. Joseph, I thought was always there too. I had that same impression. My
Uh,
dad had a devotion to St. Joseph, never paid much attention to it. In
uh,
throughout my adulthood, I left the church. I didn't practice. But then
uh,
St. Joseph sort of came back again.
huh.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah. Yeah. He's just like he's always in the background, like he is in the scriptures, right? He doesn't even say anything, right?
Yes.
But you just always have his presence there. Yeah.
I think he's the father for people that need a father.
Hmm.
And I needed a father. Always needed just a father. And he stepped in. I don't know if you needed a father, but he stepped in too.
Yeah. He's the prototype, and it's always the way I always envisioned the always type of father I always wanted, right?
Mm,
And so, um,
wow.
Yeah.
That's strange because that's exactly the same thing that I thought.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You wrote this. During the height of the financial crisis, we heard more and more about people choosing to commit suicide in the wake of losing it all.
Mhm.
I've also been there. I know the experience well of losing everything that made me feel like someone. I know very well the feeling of loss, of worthlessness, emptiness, and failure that drives a person to want to quit life. Whew, okay. The This is, yeah, deep. Suicide is primarily a male problem, but it's primarily a problem that men don't talk about. So
Mm. Mhm.
it's nearly 80% of, it's, I think 79%, 80% of the suicides in the United States are men.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So you I mean, I actually attempted suicide, but you contemplated killing yourself.
Yeah. I mean, like when you say attempted, did you like,
I slashed myself.
oh, okay. So you drew blood. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Um, I don't really know how to classify whether I attempted or not because I mean, there I was, everything that had thought made me me in life, whatever I was pursuing, right? I was the accumulation of things, the accumulation of money, the accumulation of women, the accumulation of cars, of degrees, um, whatever Freemasonry has given me, the accumulation of Masonic degrees and fame and title, all that I accumulated, that I self-identified through, and I thought made me me, was now gone. Right here, I was in a prison cell, and my lawyers tell me, hey, they're talking about 9 years, right? And so from back then, and I ended up not even doing just a little bit over half of that, but back then, 9 years, the difference between 9 years and 90 years didn't seem like anything to me. It was all like, that's a
Yeah.
long time. And I could not do that. So got on the phone that night, and I called all my family. They didn't know what I was talking about. I just, hey, just want to call to you. I love you. And
Mm,
I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. Um, But I got back on the bed that night, and I put a plastic bag around my head,
yep.
um, tighten it up with the bed sheet, make a light sort of noose. And what I was trying to do, I was trying to suffocate myself. I
Right.
didn't know if it was going to work or not, but it seemed like a good plan.
Probably would have worked. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Um, and so I started turning myself to tighten it up. And so about in the second and a half turn, I hear a voice,
Mm-hmm.
like an audible voice, not internal voice, like a voice from without that was clear, not like strong, not yelling at me, but just a calm voice that says, I love you. I am here. I love you. I am here. And I hear that voice. It's an audible voice. I'm like, what's that? And then I look around, nobody's there. And then I ask the question in my head, like, who said that? And the answer, which is now internal, is Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
which is a strange answer, completely ridiculous answer, because I thought Jesus was fiction. I thought he's made up. I thought it was the white man's religion, right? And so this Jesus, who, when I was a Freemason, I would go into his lodges and tell people they couldn't end their name in Jesus. I won't let my kids go to church because the Baptist church people told them only Christians go to heaven. And so I was completely anti-Christian. But that was a Jesus that told me he loved me. He was there for me. It's still a strange answer. I still can't, aside from his grace, I don't know why, right? And
It's
so yeah, and
beautiful.
that's what
Beautiful.
stopped me from continuing to turn that noose.
Again, it's interesting the parallels and the intersections here because I mean, there's a lot of ways to kill yourself. Some people do it quickly, like with a gun or a knife, and
Mhm.
then some people or like you were trying to do, or some people will do it slowly with drugs, with alcohol, with lifestyles. I was trying to do it slowly at the point of but my conversion story was very similar to
Mhm.
yours, where I wasn't particular. I don't know about you, but I wasn't particularly on a journey at that point. I wasn't exploring
Yeah,
Christ. I
yeah,
wasn't reading the Bible.
yeah.
I was living a really bizarre and sick life. And suddenly this, I don't know how to describe it. This, I never heard a voice, but I knew Christ, Jesus Christ, our Lord Jesus Christ was there. I darn knew it because I saw him. And then
Hmm.
it was like that.
Yeah, and that just made all the difference, right?
Yes, it did. It did. And it stopped
Yeah,
me because at that point I was near death too. And it just stopped me in my tracks. Some people need like a big intervention like that.
yeah, 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 yeah. Because I mean, he gave both of us enough opportunity to get this right on our own.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, you were raised. I mean, you were raising the faith. I had a bunch of Christians around me all my life. Um, I think we had a free choice on our own to make the right choice, but for whatever reason, by His grace, God and His grace, He intervened.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
This is another really profound thing you wrote. You wrote, my false self, the pretense, the mask that I had worn most of my life was shattered, and I hated the image that I saw looking back at me in the broken mirror. I smelled the stench of self and became nauseous. It was then that I realized that I did not know who the hell I was. Who was I? I think people that, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think people that get into some sort of self-destructive behaviors, I don't think there's any soft conversions. You don't go out and find a ministry that suits you. I didn't go out looking for an LGBT ministry that had the rainbow flag and pride mass and all this stuff.
Oh
It was
wow.
I just knew at that moment that everything was wrong and just everything had to change now. And I
Yeah.
kind of got that feeling when I was reading your story too. It was abrupt. It was like St. Paul. It was just an abrupt conversion. Now it
Mhm.
happens now, you know.
Yeah. 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 I thank you. Yeah, thanks for telling me that because sometimes, videos I've made about priests who are pushing homosexualism. Sometimes I'll get comments underneath those posts from fathers with sons who um, are same sex attracted, and they say,
Hmm.
what do I say to my son, or like the video I made about masturbation. Um, people comment on there like, oh, or they'll email me, saying, what can I do, all this stuff. The point that you just made was that sometimes we could be so far down into that rabbit hole,
Hmm.
right? That we need something abrupt to just pull us out.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I tell this to parents too that have LGBT kids, and because they want to know what to do. And prayer I think is important because I know my dad, as strained as our relationship was, my dad prayed me out of that life. I know it. He just
Wow.
prayed day and night. How many rosaries? He would do the four mysteries of the rosary, not 4 decades, the four mysteries of the rosary twice a day. I mean, crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
And I know that's what pulled me out of it. I just
Only
know it.
love can pray with such fervence, right?
Yeah. 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 Some people I think have a difficulty maybe expressing love verbally
Yeah.
or outwardly, but I think prayer can be an act of love. And I think if that's what people have to give, that's what they give,
Yeah.
and
Because I know some parents, they may have a child in, the LGBT or same sex attraction culture, and they hate where the child is at, right?
yeah.
But but their hatred or whatever doesn't have really. it doesn't manifest in love for the child. It manifests in some sort of feeling about themselves, or I failed, or what's wrong for me, or they're just personal, just prejudice, not being whatever. And so it's about they'll pray maybe a couple times, but it's all about them rather than
Hmm.
for the child. But obviously, your father, his love for you, because hatred or whatever, it doesn't pray that persistently.
Oh, my dad did not like what I was doing, but I think he saw beyond what I had become.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's a special. I think a parent has that power to do. I mean, I've never been a parent, so I don't know, but I think a parent can do that. They can look at their child and say, "Wow, they've really gone, off the track." But I remember that kid,
Wow,
you know.
wow.
So I want to read one more thing you wrote, and then I'll stop. The same guy who mocked, hated, and crucified Jesus is the same guy who Christ Jesus told that he loves him and that he is here for him. This was when I first learned that God's mercy cannot be merited. It is freely given and freely received. There is nothing that we can do to earn it, and it is often given to us when we least deserve or expect it. The depth of his mercy is abundantly more fathomless than any of us can ever dream of or imagine. Yes. Yes, yes,
Mhm,
yes. That's all I
mhm.
can say.
Yeah, yeah.
It's never nobody can't count anybody out. Nobody is a lost cause
All right.
because God never gives up on anybody.
Yeah, yeah, yes. But that's very important for us to remember if we're going to be good Catholics and have the proper disposition as far as our prayer life. Because I know there's some people that's just hard to pray for, right? Just on a human level, because some things they're involved in, or how they may be treated in the church or whatever. But God doesn't give up on us.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I wanted to. I've had you too long here talking to you. I bet I could talk to you all day. I wanted to just shift a little bit because in your podcast, um, you've talked about. Well, you talk about a broad range of topics. But what I like to, like I said, I've always got the LGBT issue on my mind. That's what I'm laser focused on, and not a lot of straight Catholic laymen, talked about these topics, and priests are afraid to do so because
No.
I mean, if you specifically talk about a certain like activist priest like James Martin or Brian Massengale, um, priests have told me they get punished. They
Oh.
get they get talked to. So I'm
Oh.
glad. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Tell me about it. So I'm glad that Catholic laymen like you, God bless you, have stepped forward, and this is what I keep saying they need to do. You step forward and you've talked about it. So,
Yeah.
and I wanted to add, your I think you in your videos you go into a bit more depth than I've seen a lot of people do that I appreciate and you know the topic. I think just a lot of straight guys are squeamish about talking about the issue of homosexuality at all. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You did one on Brian Massengale. No, the Father Massengale is a professor of theology at Fordham, which is a
Mhm.
Jesuit, which is a Jesuit university. And I think you did a good job of dissecting some things that he has said. I just wanted to get your impression of what he said here. Um, this is I think this was at the LA Rec I went to, the Los
Okay.
Angeles Religious Education Congress. He wrote, "We're in this transitional time when we're moving out of one paradigm of understanding homosexuality and into another. That's part of the mess we're in. But it is our faith as Catholics that this mess contains the ground for new life and new birth." I don't mean to laugh, but
He just like as soon as you started off, I just got confused. I mean, I don't. so much of what he says, I get lost in. I have to like that video I responded to. I had to listen to it several times just to
You said you
compartmentalize.
can, yeah, you compared it to like going into a dumpster and trying to.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, that's what it was. Like, I mean, if sometimes you go into, hopefully you don't have to do it often, but you go into your trash bin or your dumpster, you got to pull all the trash out and you organize it. And then, or you're trying to find something, and then you realize this is just all trash anyway, right? And that's what it felt like trying to unpack what he was saying. Um, but I never thought about that. I didn't know that wasn't that many straight guys or uh, talking about this. And so I completely understand.
Well, they're the only. You guys are the only ones. I mean, you
Right.
did a video on Father, the priest in
Oh,
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, Brighton. Yeah.
Yes, you did. You did a video on him,
Yeah.
and
So
he's
so yeah, I mean you're an expert on this from your previous lifestyle. You made a conversion. And so I mean you see things that we don't see. You could talk about this better than we can, obviously. You're our expert on these issues. Where do you what do I get wrong or about when
what
I'm
did.
talking about it?
Oh, you haven't at all.
Oh,
No,
really?
no, not at
Yeah.
all. I mean, when he talks about there's a new paradigm of understanding human sexuality. I mean, is there going to be a new paradigm in the
I
Catholic
mean,
Church?
there cannot be because where he's coming from, him and James Martin and those types, where they're coming from is that they want the church to change its understanding of our complete understanding of what it means to be a human being. I mean, they're offering really ontological or anthropological argument here about the human being is created intentionally, specifically by God to um and what I mean by that when I say that God is intentionally creating people
Right.
with the divine intention and purpose to have same-sex attraction, and that it is immutable. That there are some people like me who may always be inclined to, I don't know, stealing things. People just have inclinations, right? So if people are inclined to have same-sex attraction, okay, people have inclinations, all right. But what this new paradigm that they're offering is that people are born that way, and they some people, maybe they'll say, are you all people, will not change, right? And that because they were created specifically intentionally by God to be that way, then that breaks down what we understand about marriage. If God created people to have same-sex attraction, then what's wrong with marriage? Why can't they get married? And so this new paradigm, it opens up all types of doors that the Catholic dogma just can't go through. We would have to change so much about our understanding of the human nature to go down this new paradigm that I mean it's just flat out heretical. But they always want to put out these little dog whistles and these little tidbits of, well, I'm not really saying that, I'm not, but they keep trying to push this envelope to change what the Catholic Church teaches about human sexuality, and it just can't go.
And what bugs me too is that the majority of gay men who identify as gay men were either sexually assaulted by another man as a child, and then most of them had dysfunctional relationships with their fathers. So was that preordained by God as well?
I mean, there you go. I mean, this new paradigm, and you could say the same thing about a lot of women, right, who are lesbians. That I hear story after story with them that they were either raped or they had some sort of traumatic experience with a man that turned them that way. And so yeah, it's. I mean, what are we saying here? What is this really this new paradigm? Is offering a new paradigm how we're supposed to understand sin and the nature of sin, nature of temptation, and God's grace. It's it's weird.
It is weird, and I think it's difficult for people to untangle because I think if you try to tease any logic out of their argument, I think you just kind of like you just kind of go crazy. You can't, because it's all based on emotion,
Yeah.
and it's based on their attachment to an identity.
And yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the nail on the head. I think you hit it the nail, and that's really what I tried to address with both Greiton and with Massengale. That I think you man, you could find this in anywhere. It's not just not with homosexuality. It's not it's just with a lot of things. Sometimes it's just with religion. Sometimes people have to hold on to a crutch
Mm-hmm.
to get them through life. They have to walk on that crutch to get them through life. And if you kick that crutch away, that crutch or that story that they relied on, then they will completely collapse and fall, perhaps feel suicidal. So you have to keep telling yourself sometimes the same story just to get through life. The problem with that is that when you don't take the time to ask yourself, is this story that I'm telling myself, is it true or is it not true? I think for people like Massengale and for Greiton and for James Martin, they haven't taken the time, or they don't care, or they're scared to ask themselves, is this story that I'm telling myself true? And they're scared. They're scared of the answer.
Mm-hmm. This is something that I wanted your reaction to. This is something that Father James, I'm reticent to call these people fathers. I mean, would you call an abusive deadbeat dad a father? I just have a difficult time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just say, James Martin.
Yeah.
So
I say
James,
Jamie. I say Jamie. I just think that's just a little more effeminate.
right. He said this, saying that one of the deepest parts of a person, the part that gives and receives love, is disordered, is needlessly hurtful. A few weeks ago, I met an Italian theologian who suggested the phrase differently ordered might convey that idea more pastorally. Differently ordered. I don't understand why they won't. Well, I think I do understand why. I think it's become intensely personal for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
these priests. I mean, you touched upon that in one of your
Mm-hmm.
videos.
Yeah.
I think it's become intensely personal. This
Yeah.
fight in the church.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I mean, certainly they could go to denominations that are very accepting of the LGBT, identity
Right.
and the lifestyle.
Right. Right. I completely understand why they fight so hard to normalize their how they feel. Right? I think Martin Luther did the same thing in a different sort of way. The whole his whole idea was pushed forth because he just couldn't understand why God loved him. Perhaps he had a bad father, right? He could just not understand, why does God love a sinner like me? And he came up with this idea. Well, he just loves me, it's grace alone. I don't have to do anything. And this morphed into a whole religion. But it was the story he had to tell himself to justify who he was. And it's something that people do. The sad thing is that we tolerate it in our church. We tolerate these people who want to come in and change what the Catholic Church has taught for 2,000 years, because they don't like who they are, because they can't reconcile, because they rather change God's church rather than change themselves, and we tolerate that. And I
Yes.
can't understand why we do.
Yes. That's why I think, and you said it earlier, that's why I think your story is important, because in reading it, I mean, you asked yourself the tough questions. And I think a lot of people don't want to go there. I mean,
I asked myself a couple of them. I mean, you've
well,
asked me tougher questions than I asked
yeah.
myself.
No, but I mean, when I read that piece from your article about looking in the mirror and seeing that
Yeah,
facade drop, that people can't do that.
it's scary.
Because yeah, well, they spend a lifetime building that up,
Yeah,
and they think it's protecting them and shielding them from
yeah,
pain, and they think it's who they are. But
yeah.
letting that drop is not easy, and they
Right.
won't do it.
I think I mean, obviously there's freedom in it. There's so
Ugh,
much freedom in telling in reconciling your mask with actually who you are. There's freedom in that, but that's scary. I understand why they don't want to.
yeah, I wanted to end on. I always like to end on something positive, and You wrote this on Facebook. I thought this was nice. This was from February 16th, 2019. You wrote, I never had a biological son, but I've been a father figure to many boys I've mentored. But just from being a son to a good father and stepfather, I know there's nothing like having a man to look up to and learn from. If you have the opportunity to be a father or father figure, embrace it and love it. Men, be a blessing. Amen. Thank you. This is what I've been challenging a lot of, straight Catholic laymen to do. Because I mean, there's a lot of guys who grew up without fathers, with abusive fathers, with
Mm,
fathers they didn't get along with ones they had dysfunctional relationships with. And I think they need boys and men need mentors, and they need good men
yeah,
in their lives. So I mean, you're saying it right there. Men be a blessing. It's hard. I know it's tough for men because they've got a lot of different things going on. They've got their own families,
all right.
they've got work, and they've got their own life. And they're trying to raise their own kids, and it's hard
Yeah,
to be to be that for somebody else.
yeah, yeah.
But
And
you at
it's
least got to try.
and yeah, I mean, it's when I was when I was living in Columbus, Ohio, I did it more formally. Oftentimes is like I went to an organization that connected me with some kids. I was that type of mentor, but I don't think it has to be that formal all the time. I think there's a lot of kids in everybody's neighborhood, right? There's a lot of you always have to be careful with parents, but there's a kid in your neighborhood who you can have conversations with and talk to, right? There's young men who you work with. It might not be a kid, like under teenage or something, but there's some young men at everyone's job who may not have had a dad who's struggling. He's 22, who you can just talk to. There's kids in everyone's family, your cousin's kid, your sister who got a divorce. There's kids everywhere around you. There's young men who you can have an impact in their life. I do that now at work, because I don't have an opportunity to be a mentor anymore formally, but just young guys at work, who just talk to them. Everyone's struggling in some sort of way, and so men, I think we have that responsibility to reach out and be a father figure
Yeah.
to men younger than us.
Thank you. And you have the experience, but I think what's most important, and you've expressed this in your writing, is that you've been willing to be vulnerable and to share, your own past and your own problems, your own failings. And I think that's what people need to hear. I think they need to hear that somebody else has been where I am, have been through it, and they've come out the other end and they're a better person.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's what's important.
yeah, I agree.
Thank you, David, for
Thanks, Joseph, for having me on.
talking to me. I could talk to you for for days.
Yeah, we gotta
And
talk again. I gotta have you on over on Talking Catholic, so I can ask you the tough questions this time.
I would love that. Yeah, yeah, thank you for going on this journey with me. And thank you, yeah, thank you for your life, and thank you for your willingness to share it with others, because I think especially men need to hear from other men, especially in the Catholic Church. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. God bless
Thank
you.
you.